I would like to start with something to help you see something that we need to do in the recovery process more. So I would like for you to turn to your neighbor, look at them in the eye, and say good morning to them, and then just kind of pause and breathe that in.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
And then I want you to look at someone else, turn, say good morning to them, look at them in the eye, pause, and breathe in that greeting. What happened to your faces when you did that?
Nice.
Your whole face changed. And what happened inside of your brain? We increase the level of dopamine in your brain when you look at people in the eye, when you greet them, when you pause, when it's authentic, interactive engagement. It increases our own natural brain chemistry, the dopamine. And when someone is an active addict, what's the drug that they're trying to increase in their brain through external means outside of themselves? What is it? Dopamine. Okay? I love to start with that example because the reality is the way our culture is changing and this rapid means of communication that's blocking real, authentic contact is also an evil twin to what's happening to the surge in addiction. Okay? Addiction, active addiction, is the most treatable, untreated disease in the United States today. I'm going to say that again. Active addiction is the most treatable, untreated disease in the United States today. It is not a choice. Addiction is not a choice. It is a biopsychosocial disease that needs a multidimensional treatment that addresses the physical realm of this disease, the brain disease, that addresses the emotional and the social realm of this disease, that helps people with this disease and family members intellectually understand the power, the cunning, powerful, and baffling nature of this disease, and spiritually to help bring them back to themselves and the power within themselves to fight a disease that is designed to kill its victims. This disease is powerful, it is cunning, and it is baffling. And the way we try to fight it, and why I'm always on board with the ARCHway Institute, is to educate the public about this nature. Because if we don't, like Dan said, if we don't really understand it, what's the difference between enabling and supporting recovery? What's helping them and what's loving them to death?
Yes.
Okay? And we as a culture, pardon my expression, suck at understanding the disease and at understanding what supports getting people into treatment, the treatment process for them, and their recovery process. I am a clinician in outpatient counseling. I have worked multifaceted in this field. Inpatient, outpatient, I run a halfway house. I've worked in jails, prisons. I have worked with every single aspect of this disease. And as a culture, we still don't understand what it takes to really help that whole process. And I've come to know and to believe that it starts with community education. The more you understand as community members, as family members, what this disease is really like, the more you intellectually understand it, the more you can support people that you love, colleagues, co-workers, extended family relatives, best friends. We are all touched by this disease on some level or another. If you believe you're not, you're fooling yourself, or perhaps in your own denial. We are all affected by this disease in one form or another. Okay? And my job is to help educate the world about the hope in this disease. Many of you know I am in long-term recovery from the brain disease of addiction. I have been clean and sober over 35 years. And that includes nights and weekends. And so I have not only my professional background, which is hugely extensive in this, understanding this and really looking at from our culture, but my own journey from self-destruction to the life I have today. And what I've come to know is this disease is so treatable. It is not the dark, pathetic, disparaging, horrible thing that we typically see when we talk about or hear about this disease. However, the early part, we are living in a culture that doesn't understand it. Okay? I say to myself, it is only by the grace of God I stand up here in front of you. Because let me tell you something. When I made that conscious decision to stop using, there weren't a lot. At the age of 24, there were not a lot of young women making that choice back then. And it was a lonely, lonely, scary journey. Today, we have a huge amount of resources and 12-step programs and support groups and recovery and sober living homes. The problem now, culturally, is not that the resources aren't there, but we don't have that bridge from A to B. And the example I like to say to people, if you're a healthy, responsible person, and you are a homeowner or an apartment owner, okay, or an apartment renter, but you have a nice place with nice stuff in it, if you're responsible and your life is not chaotic, and you look up and there's a little water spot on top of the ceiling, most responsible, accountable human beings will say, oh, is that a pipe? Is it the roof? They will somehow figure it out when it's about the size of a dime to a quarter, right? You all know that, especially if you're a homeowner and you're responsible, okay? But what happens in homes where addiction is active is it's too chaotic. They're too busy looking around trying to put Band-Aids on the chaos that usually they don't even look up at the ceiling, okay? And if they do, it goes something like this. And they just go into their own denial. And it was probably there when I bought it, okay? And as the leak becomes a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger, a dysfunctional family races longer and harder to just deny the reality of that, because that's usually not where they want to put their time, energy, and money. And what happens in homes where addiction is active, unhealthy family systems wait till when? The roof collapses. Then they go, yeah, we got a problem. When it's clearly obvious to the preschooler next door that the people in that house over there don't address family issues. They wait till it's a huge mess and the disease has progressed. And that's the goal of the ARCHway Institute, and my goal as an educator, to stop this craziness as a community of waiting until the ceiling falls in to go, yep, I think we got a problem, folks. And that's what's happening still. We wait till this disease has progressed to where it grabs the person. And my nightmare with that is the longer the disease progresses, the harder it is to get them into treatment and to get them clean and sober. And the less chance of recovery, long-term life recovery they have. So the longer we wait till the hole is huge, the more money we're going to sink into that system. And some things can't be fixed without huge structural issues being rebuilt. Okay? So the goal is to know active addiction is the most treatable, untreated disease in the United States today. It is not a choice. It is a biopsychosocial disease that needs multidimensional treatments. Okay? We need in treatment, and the evidence supports this, We need in treatment a whole rebuilding of their physical foundation and lifestyles, and we'll talk a little bit more about that so you understand what that looks like. We need an emotional, social aspect to rebuild this. We often say in my business, this is a disease of isolation. It fools its victims into believing they're okay and everyone else is the problem, and the brain begins to rewire itself to where they block all of you out. And the longer we allow the disease progress, the more they shove you away. It is definitely a disease of isolation. So we need to help them develop and connect with them socially, which is why sober living houses, 12-step support programs, all of those things, ongoing connections are so vital. And emotionally, they don't know how to manage their inner life. Emotionally, their first thought, an active addict, is to use, and we're going to talk more in depth about that. Intellectually, they need to understand that this is not their fault. Most people with this disease, it is in the family genetics somewhere, in some way, shape, or form. Even if it wasn't heroin or alcohol, it could have been alcoholism, gambling, promiscuity, spending, hoarding, abuse of food. It can be in the background. This disease is not just about alcohol or drugs. It is about lots of things that people are using more and more of today that helps them continue that search for wholeness outside themselves. That fast pace. And technology is speeding that up. Technology is speeding up that spin at a younger and younger age, because we're putting phones in children's hands and they've lost the art of play, they've lost the art of connection, they've lost the art of pause, the art of being present. Because we've stuck phones in their hands so they're connecting. And the implication is, for people with the genetics of addiction, we are seeing it starting to flare that disease because of all of that adrenaline rush with the likes. Okay, we'll talk more, but social media is not our friend when it comes to this disease, because it's not teaching them authentic living skills that promote dopamine and help people feel that connection to others. It's promoting an adrenaline rush, okay? And this rapid cycle of, I need more. And they're forgetting the art of pause and learning how to be present. And if an addict is going to get into recovery, that is one of the hardest things for them to learn, is how to just pause and be present with themselves and not on that search for wholeness outside of self. How to look at you in the eye without that shame and guilt. How to breathe in and know that they are valuable, worthy, and lovable, period. And that their past is their past, and their behavior acting out is a part of their disease. Active addicts are great people, but their brain has been hijacked by whatever substance abuse behavior or all of the above that causes them to go on that desperate search for wholeness outside themselves. The art of pause is really hard for an addict, but they must learn it. And we're now, unfortunately, creating a culture that doesn't do pause very well at all. I take my morning walks. Dave and I live in the historic district in Punta Gorda, Florida. And we take our morning walks down by the water and our evening walks at the end where the sun sets, and we just sit, we just be. There is no technology. There is God's work of art. But sometimes my heart breaks when I'm watching everybody do this all along the pathway. They're somewhere other than where they are. So culturally, we are creating a playground that breeds addiction. And that, for those of us who aren't in recovery and don't carry the disease but are here because of a loved one or a colleague or a close friend or a professional, You need to hear very clearly that the art of pause is so important. And it's very scary for addicts initially. Spiritually, also needs addressed, again, so they can see and feel that deep connection into themselves. And that's part of that quiet, present moment pause. Okay. So again, active addiction is the most treatable untreated disease. It is not a choice, it is a biopsychosocial disease that needs a multi-dimensional treatment, physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, and spiritually. For long-term successful recovery, the evidence now supports a long-term holistic model. And where I see in education, and also when family calls me to do interventions, oftentimes they'll call and they want me to do the job to just get the person into treatment, and they think that's the end. It is so sad to me. They're not willing to look at themselves. Interventions, my biggest work is with the family. There is a methodology in helping get them to understand the disease, them to learn how to pause and be present, them to build clear boundaries, so that when we go to do the real intervention with the addict themselves who is suffering from this disease, they stay in place. And that addict can feel that these whole family members understand this entire devastation of this disease, and they are doing their work to support that person. They're not losing control, chaotic, running themselves. They are present, saying, we love you, we're here for you, and this is what we need you to do. And we as family members build that bridge to get them there. The best work I do with families, the more they're willing to look at themselves, the greater that intervention is going to be. And I'm telling you what, I fight a culture that says, well, I thought, it was just about the person. Let's just put them in treatment. And they believe that the treatment center is going to cure them. We don't cure this disease. We put it in remission. And treatment is just the initial part. To pull them away from the chaos long enough to get their bodies and their brain to have a little bit of physical health to them. Treatment doesn't cure this disease. It is the beginning process, which is why we need long-term support. Treatment starts with the community, with the family members, with the loved ones, with the intervention process, with the intervention itself. Remember, I said 2 words. There's an intervention process, then there's the intervention. Then there's the treatment, whatever, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, long-term. There's all kinds of treatment today, depending on what the person, what stage they're in, and what kind of support they have. And then after the treatment, there can be halfway house, sober living houses, 3/4 way houses. And what we know in my field is if the disease has progressed to the late stages, the longer we keep them in treatment of some sort and hook them up to the lifelong group type settings, such as 12-step, the greater their chances are of staying in recovery. Because this disease doesn't go away. And it is designed to kill its victims. And if they take care of themselves and live a holistic, balanced life with good support, they can keep it in remission forever. But they need to stay with like minds. What we know today, that addicts need each other. Because the normal person, you don't have a clue what this is like. I can remember people saying to me who love me, just stop. What are you doing? I was trying, didn't work. Just cut back, just don't do so much. Well, that didn't work for me because I got the gift of addiction in my genetics. I always like to say I call it a gift today because I love my life today. And I'm one of the few people who have long-term recovery. We're there. Actually, Punta Gorda is filled with people with 20 and 30 years plus of recovery. Okay? Filled with people. But it's like I love my life today in terms of how I live it. It's balanced. I have great people, great connections. We pause. We really, when someone asks me how I am, I know they genuinely want to know. In some other circles of life where everybody's so busy, how are you? Fine, fine, fine. This canned answer. But in Punta Gorda, I just love this little place. People really, genuinely want to know how you are. And they take the time to pause. We have a gift here, folks, which is why I chose to buy a little house here. We have a gift. It reminds me of when I was growing up as a child. And that's what I want to talk about with this disease too, in terms of the recovery process. We need to pull back out some of those skills that and lifestyles that we had as a child. The slow, the present moment, the pauses, the playing, the dinners together with everyone there, no TV on. Good Lord. We didn't even have a color TV when I was growing up. And it certainly wasn't in the kitchen where we ate. Okay? And do you all remember where most of us, there's some young people here, I love to see the young people here, but most of us, you remember when your parents said to you, when you were young, go outside and play? Do you remember that? Yeah. And what did we do? We went outside and we played. Right? For how long?
Till dark.
Till dark. All day long. All day long. We went outside and we played. And we used the right side of our brain. We created. Okay? Because what was in our backpacks? Thank you. We didn't have backpacks back then. We were not hooked up to technology. When we went outside to play, we didn't leave where we were and go somewhere else, which is what technology is doing today with our young people. When we went outside to play, we popped open our right brain. We created, we laughed, we hunted, we created all kinds of things. I mean, we played zombie, we climbed trees, we did all kinds of things. We'd come home and my mom would check us for ticks in the head and leeches, and honest to God, leeches, because we play in the creeks, okay? And leeches on our legs, because sometimes one would grab you, okay? And we would then be pulled before we went in the house to make sure we were all okay. They didn't stop us from those creatures going out and playing. They encouraged it. We stayed out all day and were bummed to come home, right? What's the difference today? You tell your child to go outside and play today, what happens? Too hot, nothing to do. What? What am I supposed to do? Right? It is not their fault. I need to tell you this. It is not their fault. They were not given the gift that we had, and we need to get that back. And it's part of keeping people in long-term recovery. We need to teach them to put the cell phones at the door when we invite them over for dinner without media or technology to a home-cooked food. And connection, how are you? Tell me about your day, tell me about the kids, you know. We need to pull them back, whether we're parents or grandparents or great-grandparents. We need to teach them about the old board games. We need to teach them what it's like for someone to get interested in them. Our culture's changing today. It's expensive to live, and a lot of couples today do not have the honor and the privilege that I had, even though we did not have a lot of money growing up at all. We were very simple, middle-class people. But my mom did not have to work outside the home. So she was always there when I came home. And unfortunately today, one or both parents are typically not there to greet them. So they're losing that being able to share, which again, in long-term recovery, If people are in support groups, they have that. How are you? How's your day? You get hugs. It is a huge extended family with people who understand the insanity of the disease. And I believe as a culture we need to get that back. Whether addiction is living in our home or not, we're losing the art of present moment. We're losing the art of pause. And it's one of the big battles behind addicts because they get this restlessness. You pull the substance out of them, especially in early recovery, and they don't know what to do with themselves. So they start to search, which is why we see in my business people switching addictions. You don't hear me say alcoholics, you hear me say addicts. Because addiction takes many, many, many forms. And even if we get the heroin out of them, if they don't understand that alcohol can reopen those pathways, they will switch addictions. Whether it's busy, compulsive this, compulsive that. I know so many people who get sober, they're already in debt, but then they get themselves in more debt from spending because it's just a click away now. Okay. There's a reason Amazon is one of the biggest industries. Anything you want is just a click away. And there's a little buzz that happens for people. That's all part of really trying to shift the consciousness of this disease. And I'm not saying that things aren't okay. A normal person in moderation really does need that purchase. But what we're seeing in recovery is a lot of people are switching addictions. So I like to address the whole nature of how we can do it through busyness, not knowing how to pause, buying, hoarding, whatever, workaholism. Because if we don't really address the whole self this whole way, the pathways in the brain stay open. And they are just a very short way from reactivating it with their drugs of choice. And our job in treatment is to help them understand that. So let me go through. Primary. We talk about the disease as primary, progressive, chronic, and fatal. And people use the way they use because they can't use any other way. This disease, for most people who have activated, it's not secondary. You know, most people, let's say all of you in this room, and if you look at numbers statistically, most of you will not carry this disease. And for most people, you have a choice to use that substance or not, to shop a little more, to go to the racetrack, to whatever. Keep a little busy now working on a project, but cut back. Most people in America have, mentally and emotionally, to use any of the substances. I don't recommend heroin or whatever, but I mean to have a drink of alcohol or a glass of wine. Most people can use normally. Even if they're hurting, they can abuse. They can drink too much. Okay? Most people have that ability to say okay and not okay. And put a limit. Even if they go through a period, someone died and they kind of numbed out for a while, when they intellectually make up their mind to not do it in that way and to cut back to their normal responsible use, which is 1 drink for women in an evening, 2 drinks for men. Okay? Responsible use is very different than what sometimes people will say in our culture. Okay? And even if they go to cut back, they can. It's an intellectual choice. They don't abuse. Anybody can use and abuse. Most people have that ability to make that decision. But an addict, which is usually genetic, if it's in the family history, once that disease is activated through whatever substance, behavior, event, whatever activates it and opens it up, they begin to use the way they use because they have the brain disease of addiction. Addicts use the way they use because of the brain disease of addiction. It is not secondary to their spouse passing away. It is the way the disease is. So one of the things I always do with families, because it's the primary, is when I talk with them, and I encourage encourage, and I'm putting in the whole time what's enabling, what isn't, and trying to help you understand the disease itself, which is the #1 thing you can do. But when I work with families, I say, talk to me about grandma, grandpa, the genetics. I do a genogram of that child's parents, siblings, the parents' parents, the brothers and sisters, the aunts and the uncles, and I ask for a whole plethora of things. Was there alcohol abuse, other drug abuse? Was there obesity? Was there spending addiction? Was there gambling addiction? Was there promiscuity or a history of extramarital affairs? I ask for a family history. And oftentimes when someone has the disease themselves, there's a whole family history. It might not have manifested as in today's disempowerment heroin, because back in our day, heroin was just for, you know, the people on the street corners and the dark alleys. But now it's such prevalent because it's been made affordable. So it's in all kinds of neighborhoods and in all kinds of children and young adults and adults. So even though the heroin, it doesn't matter what the drug of choice is, an addict will use the way they use because, regardless of what it is, of the genetics. And one of the things I try to do is the more I educate families and help them look at the big picture, that's one of my goals, to take the shame out of it when we go to address the intervention for the addict. Because I let them know this is not the addict, no, this is not their fault. Your mom and dad sat down with me and they told me all these things. I break the silence. Uncle Bill, Aunt Mary, etc., etc., etc. struggled with this. That usually, not always, I didn't know those people because I can't say for sure, but I will say it feels to me like you got this fairly. The genetics in your family are there. And for most addicts, it is. It is. It's there, even though families don't want to look at it. Because they don't want to stop that workaholism or addicted to busyness or the drinking or whatever they might do. What's happening with heroin, heroin takes people down faster, so it's boom, clearly obvious. Okay? The other things sometimes take people down slower, but it takes them down. So I try to help them see that what they're doing to themselves, and this is something you can too, by really stopping, instead of just looking at the patient per se, the person you're working with or love, go back up, go backwards. And that helps balance. It's like, wow. And then if you really understand this disease, and you understand, and they know you're going to classes, you've been talking to so-and-so, you know, you're really trying to understand it, you come from a different place with them. It's not a shame-based point the finger. You come from a different place where you fight for them also, that if we don't help together do something, we are afraid you will die, because that is the bottom line. This disease is designed to kill its victims. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, depending on the drug or drugs of choice. Some things are slower than others. But addicts who carry the true brain disease, it's a primary. They're not using because, oh, their mother died when they were 6. They might think that, okay? And so why I say to you as caregivers, don't buy into any excuse. Because they'll try to brainwash you into believing it's because. So pay attention, we always say in the treatment field. Do you know how to tell when an addict is lying? An active addict when they're lying. When their lips are moving. Please remember that. An addict is good when their disease is active, of scanning the room, knowing who's going to give them that $10. And if Grandpa won't, Grandma will. And if Uncle Joe stopped doing it, or Mom and Dad, the neighbor might. They know how to tell you a story to get what they need to keep the disease going. Please remember that. When the disease is active, and the longer the disease progresses, the more you can count on the lips moving if they're conning themselves, okay? Denial and blame are the major symptoms of this disease. Denial looks like this. It's not my problem. It's not the problems. It's not my use that's causing the problems in my life. It's the problems in my life that are causing me to use this way. If I just get a divorce, if I just move to another city, if I just get a different job, those people won't be on my back and I won't have these problems. Denial. Denial. And blame. If you were just different, if you just would have did this or that, and that's where you hear the old stories. Denial and blame, they do this. We love to say, you know, every addict, when their disease is active, they've got one finger pointing at you. And the closer you are to them, the more they're going to blame you. I got to tell you that. You need to understand that. Okay, but they have, how many fingers are pointing back at me? Yeah, 3 fingers pointing back. Remember that. Whenever you hear, you should have, you needed, they're in their disease. It's really insane. But they believe it. They believe that if you do something different, they wouldn't use the way they use. When I knew my drinking was out of control when I was in college, I would date men, good guys. I hurt them deeply. But I would say to them, please, don't, you can tell I was an addict, because this is unreasonable. Don't let me drink more than 5 drinks. I know, I thought that was simple. However, I would say that to them. And then if I went over, which most addicts do, okay, because I had a very high tolerance, I would blame them for not stopping it. Because I would end up in blackouts and several different things, okay? Strange places. You know, I was crazy and no memory of it. And somehow, some of those people, unfortunately, the next day, when I have no clue what happened to them or how I got to another city that night, because I was in a blackout, I would convince them that whatever they said or did that night, it was their fault that I lost them. That's the craziness of this disease. I hurt good people. And if they got too close, what? Because I wasn't married. If they got too close, what do you think I did? You get too close to my disease, I'm just going to leave you. And that's what I did. Let's find somebody else that'll enable me for a while. And that's what I did. That's sad. I was dying and something in my soul knew it. Something in my soul knew it, but I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know that my disease was primary and that I couldn't use at all because one drink flared the pathways and off down the sliding board I went. That's scary. But that's the disease. I did not understand it. And so I hurt not just myself, but a lot of good people. A lot of good people. To the point, I will never forget this. 2 of the men I dated, really, really good men. Pushed one away, grabbed another one. This one was too close, telling me I had a problem. This one started to tell me I had a problem. I pushed him away. And the second one knew that I was dying, knew that I had a problem. He went to the other person. Guys don't do that, folks. And he said, we need to help her. And guess what I did? Shoved them both away and kept my disease going. Kept my disease going. I didn't understand it either. Good person by day, pathetic by night. And I say this, it is only by the grace of God that I'm alive today, which is why I love doing this kind of stuff. Because it keeps remembering the ugliness of this disease, keeps me in the recovery process. and keeps me in the compassion and the gut level understanding of how powerful this disease is. And my goal with those of you who don't carry this disease is to understand addicts don't try to hurt you. Addicts don't try to destroy themselves. It is a primary disease that, left untreated, again, is designed to kill them. It's progressive. And this is where you all come in. It's progressive. I didn't start out with the crazy symptoms that I had before I quit. I was the life of parties. People would invite me. I was always fun. Okay? Get a few in me, I was crazy. It was a fun crazy. In the beginning, more often than not, I could use and just be tipsy and fun. Every now and then, I would overdrink. Okay? But more often than not. And this is where families miss the progression of this disease. They don't realize you have to step back and look at the big picture. What I say to families is, step back. What was Johnny's drinking like 2 years ago? What was your drinking like 2 years ago? Okay? It progressively gets worse. It's kind of like watching a child grow. You don't see the change, it's a rapid progression. But a lot of the other addictions aren't. And we make excuses for them. Oh, it was just a bad week, or bad, they drank liquor, they're not used to it, they're used to beer. So the addict is the first to deny, and guess who's the second to deny this? Family members. Nobody wants to admit that something ugly like this disease, left untreated, is brewing in their family. So the addict is the first to deny, and the family is the second. Now, what I want to say about family, and Dan Stuckey, he kind of addressed it in the beginning. Addicts, they get to numb. When things get tough for them, they get to numb their pain. Okay? But family members, they oftentimes don't choose to numb their pain. So psychologically in my business, what we see are family members get a little crazy psychologically. And I don't mean mental health crazy. I just mean a little crazy, chaotic, ups and downs. Usually they get angry and rage because they're trying to control it instead of really stepping back and documenting it and understanding it. Okay? So oftentimes in my office, I get a presenting problem. It's a spouse who's depressed, or a spouse who has, they call it rage issues, and they come in, when really the issue is there's addiction. And because I understand addiction in their person that didn't come in. Lots of times family members come in because they think there's something wrong with them, because the disease has just whipped them around, and they don't understand it's a disease, so they get a little bit crazy in the thinking. And addicts are good at blaming them, so they think it's their fault sometimes. But the reality is that family members oftentimes get emotionally more devastated than the addict, because the addict uses their drugs of choice to numb their pain. Okay? So it's primary, it's progressive, it's like watching a child grow. And another thing I like to say about the progression, I try to leave you with images. The other thing I want to say about the progression is, it's like getting on an elevator. Okay? I was genetically born with this disease. Right? I did not activate it till I was an adolescent, but I was genetically born with it. I know that today. And when I started using, there was a love affair, psychologically and emotionally. Okay? It just felt good. It felt right. It felt whole. Even though my values said it wasn't okay to be using that young, the feeling I got, that's how I know it was a match made in heaven. and it flared open and activated my disease. So once activated, it's kind of like you're getting in an elevator and there's no up buttons. Okay, I want you to hear this. There's no up buttons. You get on. Some people carry the disease and they didn't activate it, but they genetically transfer it to their kids. Please hear that. Not uncommon. Because people will come in, well, my parents didn't even drink. Well, that doesn't mean they didn't have the disease. It means they didn't activate it through alcohol. Okay? So if you get on the elevator and you activate the disease, the earlier you activate it, adolescents progress the disease, and the more heavy the use, whether it's drugs or alcohol, the kinds of things depends on the speed of that elevator. Okay, but you get on the elevator and there is no up button. The doors close and they're on it. It's progression. What's on the elevator is a stop button. And the doors will open. But that elevator will never go back to social responsible use. What do they have to do to get back up to ground level? They got to take the stairs. That's why 12-step programs, I love the word they use, 12 steps. Okay? They got to take the stairs. Well, what's easier, folks? Getting on an elevator and zipping up, or working to work up? Okay? The stairs are this whole multi-dimensional treatment program, addressing their physical needs, their emotional needs, their social connection needs, intellectually understanding it, and spiritually. Which is why I want you to understand, the longer we've allowed the disease to progress, the more powerful the drug, which is why heroin is just wiping our kids out very rapidly. The more powerful the drug, the younger they start, the more we let it go without getting them treatment, the deeper the pathways are. It's kind of like that elevator, and the more stairs they have to climb to get back to normal, healthy, functional living. Which is why sober living houses, long-term, halfway houses, 12-step, all of the long, ongoing treatment modalities, keeping them around people with this brain disease is so important today. Please, as caregivers, don't let the addict, I'm laughing with somebody, I've got somebody in treatment and they left treatment. I'm like, why, who picked you up? They said, well, my mom. Did your mother know you left AMA? No. I told her that they let me out. This was an adult. So the mom didn't need to have brainwashed the parent to say the treatment was done, come get them. Or brainwash the family to believe that all they need to do, that they're cured, or they're done. They don't need that. They brainwash the family to say the 12-step programs don't work for them. It's because they're not working them. 12-step programs teach people this physical and emotional thing. Go early, set the chairs up, make the coffee, get the hugs, talk to people. That's the first meeting. The second meeting is the meeting itself, where someone's talking, sharing, a discussion about life and how you deal with life. And the third meeting is afterwards, where everybody hangs out, goes to get something to eat, socializes. They say in 12-step programs there's 3 meetings for everyone. Okay? Same with sober living and extended care groups. You go early. You don't sneak in late, run out early. You become a part of a group. And they begin to feel connected to other people. And they feel loved. The thing I love about recovery, especially 12-step and recovery homes, it's the fastest way for people to feel unconditional love again. Because you learn that you are loved, period. And that your disease is your disease that is treatable. Treatable. And that with each other, we can do this. If someone tries to call their mother or their father, you know, and say I'm having a craving, and the parents don't have the disease, what do you think the parent's going to do? Say it out loud. Yeah, for God's sakes, thanks for calling, you know, go for a walk, you know, whatever. But they might have a condescending or a knot in their stomach or whatever. But if those parents know that that person's hooked up to that multi-dimensional support and they call their parent, we got a team of people. Do not let addicts in recovery, especially early recovery, fool you into believing that they don't need support. I don't know any, I'm not saying they're not there, but I don't know any healthy, positive addicts in recovery who don't use support of some sort. I don't know them. At this point, of addicts in long-term recovery that love life again and don't rest on their drug of choice, completely in remission. 10, 20, 30 years. It's so amazing. If anybody ever wants hope, the AA has annual conventions all over. And, you know, to be in a room with 65,000 people in recovery taking over auditoriums is absolutely amazing. In Ohio, we are blessed to have in Akron, Ohio, which is where Dr. Bob and Bill W. met and founded the 12 Steps. We have annual meetings on, it's called Founders Day. And there's usually between 10 and 20,000 people that come from all over, actually now all over the world, to come together. And if you don't believe in the power of connection and watching people have fun, those are things that are really priceless to experience. To me, those things give normal people the whole reality of hope in a massive scale. There is so many cool things. Recovery rallies. There's so many things that the general population can come to that help see that this is a beautiful, beautiful life with the right kind of support. Never feel sorry for an addict. Never feel sorry for an addict. That will keep, I believe, their disease active. We're looking at that. We say sometimes, addicts love to go, oh, pour me, pour me, pour me, pour me another drink. That's a mantra. Never feel sorry for an addict. Have compassion that the early recovery process for this disease is a tough one. Most people still today don't make it because we don't have enough, I believe, cultural understanding. The early stages are tough. But with the right kind of support and a multi-dimensional treatment plan, whatever that looks like for them, they can do it. So it's primary, it's progressive, it's chronic. In other words, my disease still lingers in my brain. I just have it in remission. It doesn't talk to me today. It used to talk to me. You know, I felt like when my disease was active, I had this little devil on this shoulder going, Annette, you know you want it, you know you want it. And I had this beautiful spiritual voice going, Annette, you're dying. You need help. And I heard that voice. Lots of people I know don't hear that voice. What I didn't know is where to go or what to do. I just knew I was dying. And while my disease was active for several years, this is the voice that won, which then started to make me feel ashamed. But this is a powerful struggle. I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to not do it. I'm going to say that again. Addicts are not trying to kill themselves. There is no shame in this disease. We just don't understand it as a culture and as an individual who's flared it open, and we don't know what to do about it. God blessed me with a very good intellectual brain. It's genetic. But I could not think my way out of this disease. And I kept trying. I kept using my 4 points through high school and college as my justification. I can't have this problem because look at this. And I was president of this and treasurer of that. I mean, on paper, I looked functional. Like I said, by day, I could function. By night, I got myself in all kinds of trouble. And it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse until it starts to affect the day. It's crazy. Please hear it. We don't try to mess our life up. We don't try to hurt people. And the more family members get that, the more you stand firm and you plant your feet and you say, God, I'm scared. You are not yourself. And you give them a list of all the great things you remember, and you give them a list of the things that aren't them, that you believe, and use the word disease, that you believe are part of their disease. And if it's in your family history, you say, look, I'm scared. You know this killed Grandpa, or you know this killed Uncle Joe. I know you're not trying to do this intentionally. I believe you're dying, and I believe you can't see it. And when they start to give you the lip service, you just go, stop. Who are you trying to convince? Yourself? Because I already understand it. So if you're trying to brainwash yourself into believing you're okay and everything else is the problem, that's the disease too. But I'm not going to buy it anymore. Okay? So the more we stand strong and grounded and educated, which is why I always educate people regardless of the topic, the more we don't buy into their BS, because they will try to convince you that they're cured, or they don't have the problem, or they've made a difference, or they're not that person anymore. Trust me. It sends chills up my spine when I hear addicts go, trust me. I'm not that person anymore. I can handle it. And they've had no social support, no treatment, because they believe, as I believed, if I just put my mind to it, I can be different. Well, if that was the truth, I wouldn't have let my disease progress so long and hurt so many people deeply. And my health. We can't. Don't let them fool you into believing they can do it by themselves. You want to believe that, one, because it's cheaper, right? You don't have to write any more checks for treatment, right? It is, it's cheaper. And you want them to be okay. Okay. This is a family disease. Everyone needs to be in the recovery process. Everyone needs their own support of like minds. You heard Dan again saying they love getting together with people and family members in recovery and hearing stories. That motivates them. It helps them feel hope. And as I said in the beginning when we said hello, it increases the dopamine in our brains, which is the free drugs, which is part of the value of 12-step support group sober living. Okay? The end of the road, it's chronic, they'll die. Please know that. And the more we understand it, and the earlier we catch that leak in the ceiling, the less cost it's going to be and the more easy it will be to repair. If we wait till it collapses, It's more money, more time, and more resources. And we know that if they get on the elevator and activate it and the disease progresses, we know that the bottom of the road is death. I'm going to say it again. This disease, the hardwiring in the brain, is designed to kill its victims. I'm going to give you a little bit of education about it. 3 parts of the brain we know are majorly affected once the disease is active. The nucleus accumbens, okay, flares up. And the nucleus accumbens is the primal part of the brain that says eat food, drink water. But for addicts, it says use. For normal people, it says eat food, drink water. It's your survival mechanism. It's the reptilian brain. For addicts, we know that that part of the brain flares. Normal people, it doesn't. And like I said, eat food, drink water, use. As the disease progresses, it skips the food and oftentimes skips the water, okay? Because they're liquid diets. But in the early stages, it kind of talks, and it's a subtle voice early on. It just lingers, like I said, that little devil on my shoulder. Come on, Annette, you know you want it. You can do it. It won't cause any problems this time. Okay? Brainwashes, seduces its victims. The next part of the brain that's affected is called the VTA, the ventral tegmental area, which is where the amygdala is housed. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that if somebody set the fire alarm off, it's the part of the brain that goes, wow, we gotta get out of here. It's your natural operation under panic. The amygdala is what goes off when you are hurting emotionally about something. And the amygdala says, you know, you need to call a friend, comfort yourself, take a hot bath. It will help you. It's the stress, it takes care of the stress part. Well, in addicts, it's the part of the brain that says, use. Their first thought, we always say, we make a joke, first thought wrong. Under stress, an addict's first thought is use. The fire alarm goes off, they're going to grab their stash before they go, okay? You might grab the child, but they're going to grab their stash, okay? First thought is to protect the supply and to use. Normal people aren't wired that way. First thought is survival and people, okay? So the amygdala flares up, and then the prefrontal cortex and the cortex, which is the executive functioning of the brain, learns that the last time they used, it worked, so this time it will again. It entrains the brain and encodes a memory that using works. I felt better. Okay? So the primal part says eat, drink, use. The amygdala under stress says use. And the prefrontal cortex gets hijacked. And it says, it worked the last time. It doesn't say, oh, but don't you remember all the problems it caused? It doesn't do that. It says, you got relief last time, go for it. So there's this blindness that happens in the brain of addicts, and you can't see that. What you see is them driving to get drunk again or use their fix or whatever. But in the brain, it pulls them into that substance. And what treatment is about is to pull the substance out and to help those pathways quiet themselves and to carve out new pathways of social support, coping skills, meditation, healthy eating, exercise, which they've limited. You know, a lot of addicts, you know, they've kind of been pulled towards the addiction. And so treatment initially helps pull that substance or substances away from them, and long enough treatment helps those pathways kind of close down. They're never filled with cement though. I like to say sand fills up in them. So eventually it doesn't talk to you. That's what I said earlier. My disease doesn't talk to me. I don't have those pathways. You know, under stress, I think hot bath, go to bed early, call a friend, hit another meeting, whatever. I don't think the way I used to think. That changes for most addicts in their first year of long-term recovery. They don't think use first. If they're really working the steps or working a program and working support, the first thoughts begin to be silenced. Doesn't mean they won't think of it under huge stress, but by that time, hopefully, they've got lots of support and they can talk way out. But it doesn't continue. They don't fight every day of their life with long-term good recovery that's addressing the multidimensional treatment. And that's one of the messages I want to say to people, which is why I said you really don't feel sorry for addicts. I love my life. It has taught me how to live in the present moment. It has taught me what is important. It has taught me the value not only of myself, but of family, of friends, of connection. I am not driven by power, money, and success that our world is trying to seduce us into. Okay? Had that been the case, I might have bought over at Miami. I bought in Punta Gorda, which we are living that present moment, beautiful life that's authentic. You don't know who has money and who doesn't, because people are not flashy here.
That's right.
You don't. And there's some money here, because some of the homes do cost. But you don't know who has it and who doesn't. Because that's not what's important. That's not what's important. And the same in long-term recovery, we begin to help them feel the value of themselves again. And that's where you as families, and I gave you a handout, you have it. It's also on my website for free. But I gave you a handout that talks about some of the stuff we've talked about today. It's called Addiction is Not a Choice. Addiction is a biopsychosocial disease. And actually, Dan and Jan had asked me to put a piece together for families and what they can do. And one of the things I did in the second section is proactive prevention in our own families. What does that look like? Okay? What does that look like? And if you look at page 3 of that handout, and it's also on my website, AnnetteFranks.com, there's lots of things. The intervention process, the recovery process, it's all free. I am just like Dan and Jan and the ARCHway Institute. We're trying, and they have tons of amazing resources on their website. There are so many resources out there for families that are free that there really is no excuse anymore for people saying, well, I can't afford. If you really look at a lot of the things, that's my gift back to the world, is what I put on my website, AnnetteFranks.com, is a whole section on addiction and the recovery process and understanding addiction. But if you look at what do we need in helping families so we don't enable, the first thing is to really understand this disease. If you understand the principles I've shared with you this morning, you realize no matter what they say, if they are not hooked up in their treatment process, which we can also have ours and be a part of, but we are not it. When they talk about their sponsor, or they talk about their group, or they talk about their friends in recovery, and they talk about the things they're doing that were so much fun that they did sober, when they're talking about that, you know they're anchored into recovery. But if they're bad-mouthing that group, or that therapist, or that 12-step program, they're not. Their disease has still got them hijacked. Please hear that. When they're bad-mouthing people, and what that can't do for them, their disease is still hijacked. And every now and then people do something and it didn't really work. But when we look at the multi-dimensional whole team approach, one thing might not work, but this does, and this does, and this does. So you should hear more progress of support, and every now and then something might not be for them. But you'll hear about all the things that are for them. Okay? That's true recovery. That's true recovery. And you'll hear that. So the more we understand the way the brain gets hijacked into three parts, the primitive part saying use or die, the amygdala saying use under all kinds of stress, and the prefrontal cortex encoding the memory that says it worked the last time and it wipes out the reality of the consequences. It just focuses on the good stuff. The more you understand that, the more you know they need this multidimensional treatment. And do not allow yourself to be brainwashed. The questions I like to say to families is, tell me what you're doing to support your recovery process. This is after they've got into it. Tell me more. And make a little note. You know, people when they get older, they forget certain things. Make a little note when you're finished with that person that John talked about his best friend Bill or this new person. And the next time you see them, ask them about that person. It's the same thing as healthy parenting. You ask about your kids' friends. How was it going? What'd you guys do? And you're not going, I want to know. You're inviting them to share who they are and what's working. It's a whole different set of energy. And you get interested. And what are you learning? And what's working and what's not working? And what do you like the most? You get interested in their life with questions. And then you make sure you pause. And one of the things I love to say to family members is, you've got to take care of yourself. Because what I see with a lot of family members is they're so afraid of the person relapsing that they hover. You know? Helicopters hover. We should not hover. We should not hover. Why? If my family would have hovered over me, I would have kept going like this. You. I guarantee you, because I was pretty angry. Because I was raised with active addiction. I don't think I mentioned, but in my family of origin, we have over 100 years of long-term recovery. Half of us got the disease, activated it, and we're in long-term recovery. And again, that counts nights and weekends, okay? But if they would have hovered over me, I would have never got in my gut. And I need you to hear this. Star it. Addicts are 100% responsible and accountable for their disease. So I never want you to feel sorry for them, because that's not going to help them do the work they need to do. Addicts are 100% accountable and responsible for their disease. Now where we come in is, remember, because it blindsides them, they can't see. So the more the family members come in and help them see that they're dying, that's where the intervention, the steps for the intervention come in. And getting them into treatment come in. Okay? But once you get them into treatment, it's the treatment facility's job to help them put in their gut what I just told you. You don't need to worry about it anymore. You need to light a candle. I tell family members this all the time. You light a candle for that person, and every morning you light a candle and you say, Dear God, or Dear angels, or whatever your belief is, Dear God, I give you my son. Help them choose recovery today. Choose recovery again today. And you say a prayer. And that's proactive participation in their recovery. If we don't believe they can do it, and we feel sorry for them, and we hover, and our fear gets in the way, so we start to micromanage it, they can't get out of the way. For God's sake, think about it. If a helicopter's hovering over something, the sun can't get there. Okay? And no one else is going to come around because this helicopter rapid cycle. It's the best metaphor I can come up with. We cannot hover over addicts. We have to step back and let them know we're going to these meetings, we're learning about it, we read this book, how else can I be here for you? Tell me what else you need. This is what your father and I or your mother and I are doing to understand this disease. While we light the candle and we let them know through our behavior and our health and wellness that we believe they can do this. And that we have the compassion, not the fear, that it's probably the hardest thing they will ever do in their life. Is the early part of recovery. because the brain is still talking. Use or die, use or die, use or die. Which is why they need this multi-dimensional support system of physical, emotional, social, treatment, etc. over here to help get them back to balance. And life balance and health is the long term. It is the long term that addicts need. I have to take care of myself. I don't have the luxury of overworking and overextending and not getting enough sleep and eating crappy food. I don't have that luxury. Okay? I need to protect my sleep. I need to eat healthy. I had to learn how to develop emotional coping skills. I needed to build a powerful support. And that's a lot of work early on when the disease is going, use, use, use. Okay? But it works. And then eventually, like I say, the pathways shut down. I don't hear that voice. I have no desire. But I'm still hooked up in all of my support systems. So that if for God forsaken something, I stop taking care of myself, which I don't. I really do take care of myself. But if I did, and this started to talk, I know, because I stay rooted in the education of the disease, that it wants to kill me. But right now, and for over 35 years, it's been in remission. This summer will be 36, okay? And we can keep it in remission with lifestyle, okay, and support, and that's what I want you to hear. But early on, family members need to know it's a lot of work. And that's the questions you want to ask them. So what are you doing that's helping? And what are you doing that's working? What feels good, what doesn't feel good? Tell me more. And then listen. Listen. And also share your excitement with them that you love the fact that they're doing this. And keep them in the attic one day at a time. For today, we pray they'll stay sober, and for today you trust that they will do everything they need to do to keep themselves in remission. And they are responsible for that. Our job is, like I said, and I repeat this over and over, to help them to bust their denial and to get them into treatment. Because left unattended, what did I say an addict will do? They'll die. Addicts will use until it kills them. And that is what we see more often than not. So when their disease is active like that, we are the bridge. The community is the bridge. The family is the bridge between active addiction and their beginning the recovery process, which is their beginning of treatment. And the more you understand the progression, and the more you take care of yourself so you don't hover, and you know that, and live in the fear, the more you take care of yourself, the more they can see your eyes, not your own shame and uncomfortableness and fear. The more they believe that you're going to walk with them through this. You get it. It's our eyes and face of compassion. I see you, I hear you, I'm here, but you got to do it. How can I help you? I see you, I hear you, I'm here. I read this book and it was great and it taught me so much. That's what you say to them. My heart pours out for you, but I know together we're going to do this. There's enough support out there today and evidence-based research that says this is treatable. But it's this multi-dimensional treatment that addresses all of the biopsychosocial needs of this disease. Bio, the biological, the psychological, and the social. All of those needs have to be addressed for what we see long-term recovery. And the reality is, We can do this. We are kind of like support people. The weller families get, and positive and hopeful. You know, part of my gift as an interventionist is the hope that I have. Somehow, when I look them at the eye, I don't go into any intervention afraid. I've worked with the family long enough to get them ready. When the family is ready, we go in. And if they're willing to do the work they need to do and stay in treatment, and sometimes they just need to help the addict. Like I told you earlier, can't do it. The more successful the interventions, the longer the family is willing to really look at themselves and get healthy. Not blame, but get healthy. And so as they do it, I believe it is our faces of hope. My ability to look at them in the eye. We can do this. And I say we. We can do this. Your mom's on board, your dad's on board, your sister's on board. They've done A, B, C, and D. They've been preparing for a long time. We just need to get your body healthy. And that's why we want you to go into inpatient treatment, especially if it's progressed to the late stages. And give your time a chill out. And we kind of sell them on why recovery is important and that they can do it, just like they've been selling us that their disease isn't that bad. And the more of us around, the addict who gets it, has cleaned up their own energy, isn't living in their own fear, has taken care of themselves physically, because like I said, a lot of family members, they're exhausted. Well, you can't sell sobriety looking like that, I'm going to tell you. Sobriety, you need a message of hope, okay? So I say to family members, take care of your own depression. You're going to be a better sales agent for what we're about to do with the person who's using heroin or alcohol or drugs, okay? So the reality is, the way we take care of ourselves, and it's etched in stone, and getting back to healthy eating, clear boundaries, fun activities, and I've listed on this thing 15 things that help families really say, what can I do? And they're there, okay? Exploring your own family history, as we talked about. Talking about real life issues with the kids. I don't want to smash here. Okay, sorry. Talking about real life issues. Okay? One of the things, and I make most family members read this book. She was a pioneer in the field of addiction. Claudia Black's book, It Will Never Happen to Me. She talks about 3 things psychologically that happens in family systems. They don't talk about real issues, they don't share their feelings, and they don't trust that anything will ever be different or the world is there for them. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And recovery is about the opposite. We're going to talk about the black snake in the middle of the living room. This is not okay when you spend that much, or you do this, or you come in, whatever it is, that's the list I told you to make. We're going to talk about that. We're going to share how we feel. I'm scared to death. And you see that look. Addicts can feel that. You look at them, and I'm scared to death. You're not shaming them. I'm scared to death. I believe this disease has got you. And this is why I feel that way. And you have your list. Please. And I tell family members, don't talk to addicts before you understand what the resources are. Find out what the resources are. Books, groups, treatment, find out what the resources are there. And like I said, the intervention process is spelled out for free on my website, AnnetteFranks.com. You can step by step read. Then I do encourage people to get a professional in your community that understands the brain disease of addiction to help assist in the process. Okay? However, the whole process is there to help people understand. It's not about hauling someone to treatment and then we're done. Okay. But there's a whole process. But part of that process is taking care of ourselves. So we are more grounded, more present, more effective. Okay? So, and we're undoing what Claudia Black says so clearly in her It Will Never Happen to Me book. We're talking about real issues, we're sharing how we feel, and we're trusting that there's a support world, treatment world out there. And they are. They are. Every community that I know has support groups and treatment options today. It's the world doesn't understand what they are, but they're there. One of the other things that I like to say, that it starts with home, and it's part of mental wellness, okay? And that is mental wellness, and this is for family members. Mental wellness is defined by our ability to experience a wide range of feelings deeply. I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist, which means I help people learn how to manage what's going on inside, okay? Emotionally. And mental wellness is defined by I can go clear here, joy, ecstatic, feel connection to the divine, you know, happy, the whole bit, and back. And I can go to deep, gut-wrenching, heaving, pain, suffering, and back. Okay. Mental wellness says, as a human being, I was born with the ability to feel a wide range of feelings deeply. And mental wellness also says, and manage them. Okay? This is really important to understand when you're dealing with your family members or friends or clients in recovery. Addicts suck at letting themselves feel either continuum and knowing how to get back. They've lost through the progression of their disease usually the ability to manage the inner life. The inner life, the emotions, are what happens as we're doing life. You know, if you were here when Irma blew by us a few months back, you know the inner world that goes on, the emotions, okay? But you managed that. You talked to people, you prepared, you got busy, you did what you needed to do to keep yourself and your family safe. Doesn't mean your property made it through. But you all made it through, and your families did too, in this community. But you know how scary it was. What do you think an addict does when something like that happens? Put their shutters up and get drunk.
That's right.
Boy, I heard a lot of that too. You're staying? Yeah. Yeah. That's a little crazy in my mind today in long-term recovery. Okay? When we knew that the historic district was going to get flooded. That's what they predicted. Wow. But the reality is, addicts lost that ability. So they'll drink for the good times, celebrate, and they'll also drink for the pain. Which is why social network groups, 12-step recovery living places, sober living places are so important. Because it gives them safe havens to begin to wiggle in good feelings without saying, and I need a drink to process that and celebrate. And it also gives them room to start to process some of their emotions that they used to first thought just drink at. Okay? And if we as family members have learned in our journey how to process those ourselves, then we can hold the space for them while they're navigating through their early recovery. But if we're still living in fear and we don't manage right and we still are up and down with our own emotions, we can't help them. We can't help them. We're a threat to them. I need to tell you that. That's why a lot of addicts are afraid to go home in early part of treatment. Because either the family members are still drinking or using or running or still seeing them as, you know, you got to do what you need to do. They haven't created the space. The thing we can do as families is create the space where they feel safe to come back into, maybe for the first time. but create the space of emotionally present moment. And that starts with our ability to learn how to manage our own feelings. Not light a cigarette, have our own drink, keep busy, race, get drunk, whatever. It starts with our ability to have those pause times too. So we can sit with them, just like a good clinician, and see them, hear them, and hold that space with them while they navigate through some of the gut-wrenching pain that I guarantee you will come up when they look at the people they've hurt and what they did when they were acting out and using. And I gotta tell you, families don't do that very good, in my experience yet. And that's why I love the opportunity today to come to ARCHway. So what can we do? We can take care of ourselves. We can learn to manage our own emotions so we can be that safe haven. Because they need a place to come home to, where we play the board games, we eat healthy meals together, we laugh, we learn the interactive engagement of what it's like to have fun. And it's all the things that I said to you earlier when we were growing up, for those of us who are in our 50s, 60s, 70s. We learned those simple things in life. And as family members, how do you not enable the disease? How do you support the recovery process? We support it by creating that. My family is a wonderful haven. We don't drink at family gatherings. We play games. We play cards. We play croquet. We do things inside. We do things outside. We sit and we eat together. There is no technology. Nobody's on Facebook or wherever collecting likes. We are present with each other. It is so cool. That's what families can do. And if the child is young enough, like we have 4 generations in our family, you know, they know what we learned growing up. But a lot of families don't have that in their 3rd and 4th generation. And again, it's not the kid's fault. We've lost it as a culture. This disease and how it's progressing is bigger than just people directly affected. We live in a culture that is promoting the activation at earlier and earlier and earlier ages, and we're losing the art of being present. So, as you can see on your list, and 2 hours is never enough time to go through everything, but I've given you some really neat tools that in here, and we've talked about them, to know that, in summary here, it is a primary, it is progressive, it is chronic, it is fatal, and we need a multidimensional treatment. And family members, instead of enabling, also need to understand the multidimensional. And we can create within our own homes the healthy atmosphere so they can begin to feel safe when they come back. It is never too late to have a happy childhood. Never. And it's about getting back to the present moment and understanding this disease. I'm going to close, unless there's with...
We'll
I'm
open
going
it
to
for some questions.
Speaker. I'll close with what Father Joseph Martin said, who was one of the founders, just like Claudia Black, who wrote It Will Never Happen to Me. Father Joseph Martin was one of the forerunners in the field of addiction. He has since passed on. But I'm going to close with one of his favorite sayings. When you see someone who doesn't have a smile on their face today, please give them one of yours. Thank you.